Hey guys, this is Dr. Polly. We're going on to part 2 of this video series, and this covers notice that this part is used for questions 1 through 3, and each question basically has you modify the values of these variables here. Okay, we did part 1 already. We're using these dimensions, but we set it up with linked values. That's really important because we're going to go through really quickly and knock out part 2 and 3. Now, if you did it old school, what you would do is basically you'd probably go back into your part, find those specific dimensions, change those dimensions. It might give you some headaches because things won't update correctly, perhaps, and stuff like that. And if you didn't label your dimensions, then you'd have to figure out where they are and stuff like that. We're going to use what's called a design table, and we're going to modify a couple of instances of this part for part 2 and part 3 within a matter of just minutes, and it's going to create a total of 3 different parts. It'll be the original here, and then we'll create one, we'll call it part 2 or stage 2, and we'll call one stage 3, and these will be the dimensions for it. Okay. So that's what we're going to do, so follow along. Alright, so here's where we left off. Everything was good. It came out okay. Nailed it as far as the mass goes and stuff like that. And we went ahead and linked all of our dimensions, etc. So now we're going to create the other 2 instances of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say Insert, and we're going to go to Tables and do a design table. Now what this does is it's going to open up an Excel file, okay? But that Excel file is actually going to be internalized within SolidWorks, so you don't have to keep up with an external Excel file with your part. You can set it up that way if you want, but for now we're not going to worry about that. Alright, so when we do our design table, we want to do an auto create, allow model edits to update the design table. Don't mess with this one right now. Don't block anything yet. And make sure all of these are selected. And I'm going to say OK. And give it a second or two, and it's going to do its magic here. And now it says, OK, so please select the following dimensions to add to this new design. Well, remember we named our dimensions? Well, there's A. Now I'm going to hold Control because I'm going to select different ones. Okay. There's A, there's B, hold Control, there's C. Let's keep going here. There's my D dimension, there's my X dimension, there's my Y dimension, there's my E dimension. So let's make sure we got everything. We should have A, B, C, D, and E, and then X and Y. Okay. Notice I didn't do anything with the whole and F. The whole doesn't change in all 3 of these, so I didn't mess with it. But later on I'll show you how we can suppress it, okay, for the future things. So anyways, here we go. There's everything I want. I'm going to say, remember I did that by holding Control as I selected them, okay? And by naming them I knew exactly what dimension I wanted to keep, okay? I'm going to say OK. And what will happen is it'll create a table. Let's move that over this way. This is default, which basically is the original part. And there's the values for A, B, C, X, Y, there's D, and there's E. Okay, so let's go through and make sure that's correct. So according to part 1, A should be 213, B is 200, C is 170, X is A divided by 3, D should be 130, Y is B divided by 3 plus 10, and E is 41. Okay, now this is the awesome part of this. I'm going to call, it was called stage 1 on that one. So now we're going to do what's called, in the test they call it stage 1. Alright. And stage 1 has like part 1, part 2, part 3. Okay, so I'm going to call this one part 2. Okay, and I'm going to create another design called part 3. Okay, so here's how it works. I've got the dimensions and stuff right here pulled up for part 2, and basically it says it's simply updating the part using those variables. Alright, so A is now changed to 225. I'm going to hit tab to move over one. B is 210. C is 176. X is still A divided by 3. Now, if you're going to type in a formula into this, you need to look at how it's laid out. It's not simply equals. If you click that formula and look up here in this formula bar, there's a single quote, then it's equals, and then A is in quotes divided by 3. And that's how you would have to go about typing it. So we'll do this one manually. Okay, so I'll just to show you how. So single quote equals quote A end quote divided by 3. Okay, so there's that formula, same thing. Now I'm lazy, so what I usually do is I just copy and paste it if the formula doesn't change. D changes to 137. Y is still B divided by 3 plus 10, so I'm just going to copy that and paste it here. Okay. You can also do and hit escape to deselect something. You can copy paste, Control C, Control V, right click and copy paste, whatever you're comfortable with there, or doing manual entry if you want to practice. And the new value for E is 39 millimeters. Alright, so let me scroll down to part 3. Those are the only things changing. So part 3 is 209 for A, 218 for B, 169 for C, 125 for D, 125. E has changed to 41, back to 41. And now let's look at this. Y is still B divided by 3 plus 10, and X is still A divided by 3. So I'm going to copy that, paste it there, copy that, and paste it there. Alright, hit escape to deselect. I have just created 3 parts. There's the original, there's part 2 modifications, and there's part 3 modifications. Now, how does that work? When I've got all that stuff done, I'm going to click off of it on the screen somewhere, and it's going to jump around a little bit, and it says the table generated the following configurations, part 2 and part 3. I'm like, okay. Part 2 and part 3 have been generated. And you're going to say, well, I don't see any difference. Well, let's look at mass properties right now. And yeah, I got to rebuild, so. Alright, there we go. I rebuilt it, and my original is 14207.34, which is correct, so I'm good there. Alright, but watch this. I'm going to go over here to Configuration Manager, and you can see there's different configurations. That's the default, part 1. I'm going to double click part 2. Alright, now part 2 is active. You notice some slight changes to that. Let's go to Mass Properties and look, and it's changed. It's now 164.90.45, and so that would be the answer that I'm looking for, 164.90.45. Okay, so that is the correct answer for the second part. Notice I didn't have to go inside the part and change anything. I just created a table based on those linked dimensions, and I did it correctly. Okay, alright, and that works. So we're good there. Alright, so I've just finished part 2 in a matter of minutes. And if I wasn't here explaining it, it would have taken me all of like maybe 2 minutes to knock out part 3 and part 4. So now let's look at part 3. Double click it. I'm going to go to Mass Properties and look. And the correct answer is 151, 15,100, .46. They have .47. I can't find out how they did that. I think it's just a rounding error. When you do the exams, they give you plus and minus so much tolerance to be off by. But that's right on it. So that's the correct answer for part 3, is 15,100. .46. Okay, And that is a design table. Okay, and that is the beautiful part of that. And if you go back and look, you can actually, right there is, we're dealing with part 3. And later on in the third part of this series, I'm going to show you how you can go through and make different modifications in addition to your driven dimensions and stuff on the various configurations of that part. Alright, so I'm going to go back to the original. Okay, and that's it.